Hello everybody, it's Julian or Flow Graphics here, and welcome to another Game Dev Diaries video. Sorry for the long wait. I know I've been getting a lot of people asking me when this next video is going to be out. To be completely honest, I've just been trying to work on the game. I had a little bit of downtime for like a week or two, but I've been working like a lot on this, and I just wanted to try get as much done as possible before this next video, which is why there was a bit of a delay. You may be looking at my screen right now, things look a little bit interesting. So I'm going to explain where I'm sort of at the moment. So the whole idea of the game has changed a little bit since last time. My first video, I was making a game similar to a previous game called Tension that I was working on through university, except it was going to be sort of a single player version of that game. I had a little sit down and a think, and I just thought about the main sort of reason I was going to create that whole game idea was because I had already worked on it and I knew a lot of the things involved to make such a game, and it just seemed to be like a really easy and straightforward idea for a game. It wasn't necessarily a game that I would really thoroughly enjoy making or something that was new learning experience or anything. It was just something that was like a good starting point. And I thought a little bit more about it, and I thought, hey, if I'm going to be spending, possibly a year plus of my life working on something, I should probably make something that I'd personally really enjoy. And not to say that I wouldn't enjoy playing that game, because I definitely would, but I'd want something that I'd just be a bit more passionate about and I think this is a bit more interesting, and something I can learn a bit more from. So I'm going to explain a new idea, a slight sort of, it's a completely new idea basically of the game that I'm now working on, which is the game I'm going to be working on going forward. I'm sorry, it's a bit confusing, but I'll sort of explain everything now. So this is what I've worked so far. Yeah, this is what I've worked on so far. I'll quickly just show you around the Unity scene and stuff, and then I'll explain everything in a lot more detail. I've reused just the cloak character at this moment. I'll maximize this. So I've reused just this little cloak from the old character, because I haven't made any characters or anything yet. I've created an all new movement system. It's similar-ish to the old one, but I've just sort of reworked it and made it a lot better. So basically, wherever you click on the screen, the character moves towards that location, and the character sort of rotates. It's called lerping. It sort of just rotates and follows the mouse position, and then it you just sort of move towards that position. It's a lot more smooth, a lot more refined, and just looks a bit nicer now than before. So that's something I've sort of reworked as the moving. You can also jump as well. Now you can see these trees in here. So one sort of key feature that I've added is resource gathering. So if you walk up to one of these trees, your character stops moving and a little health bar. And then if you click, some little particles come out and you chop away at the health of the tree and then you break it. So yeah, I've added this sort of basic resource gathering. So at the moment, there's no animations, there's no GUI or inventory or anything. I've just made it so I've made all the sort of the prefabs so you can go around, and this works for rocks and any other sorts of resources. I just have it hooked up to trees at the moment, and you can go up. And there's a few things that are sort of happening here. You can basically click on something and you'll move towards it, and then the second you get within range of hitting it, you'll stop moving. And then if you click, rather than moving again, you'll hit the tree, and then the health bar comes up, and the health bar is tied to the tree health. Every time you click it, the health bar goes down, and then also some sort of animation plays. Obviously, that could be a much cooler animation. And then when the tree dies, another animation plays. For the moment, I've just turned on the rigid body, so they just flop everywhere. I'll probably make that a lot cooler, but for now, that's good enough. And I've also made I've sort of tried to create a building system. So if everything's temporary, there'll be like a UI system and all that. So I've just made little hotkeys to make everything work at the moment. So if I hold down Q, that enables a building system. So if you're wondering why there's all this yellow all over my screen, the yellow is just basically where I can build. So this is where sort of like a spawn point could be. So anywhere in the yellow, I can build a foundation, and that sort of snaps to this whole sort of grid system here. And if I click, those foundations build wherever my mouse is. And then if I just hit the 2 key on my keyboard, then I can go to walls. And then I can build walls anywhere on these foundations. I just need to hover over the sort of the edges of any of these foundations, and I can build walls. And at the moment, I just sort of click to place them. Again, I don't have any resources or any sort of wood or anything hooked up yet. And I've just got the basic sort of for that. and then you just let go of Q. Obviously, it's it still keeps the items showing and everything. I haven't really done anything with that. I just made it work at a basic level, and then that's it. And then another thing you may have noticed just then is sort of like a look-through system. So this was going to be a really important part of my game, which was being able to see the character through objects, because obviously with this sort of camera angle, there's going to be a lot of times where you can't see the character. So you need to be able to see the character through objects. So I was trying to create this myself for a very long time. I spent like a fair few days creating various scripts and things myself. And I ended up basically just buying a package from the Unity asset store and sort of reworking that a little bit into something that works for me. It was just a lot better. It looks a lot better and it works a lot better than the one I created, which sometimes you just have to do. I tried to create the one I was doing. I'll explain to you what I was sort of doing in my one. So I created this sort of object here that was acting as the ray. Now I did this twice. Firstly, what I did was I made a second object that basically matched the player's position in the world, and then I just sent out a raycast, this little invisible laser beam, and then everything that laser beam touched, so it was going up towards the camera. So if the player went in front of a tree, then that laser beam would hit the tree, and then whatever sort of material that laser beam hit, it would turn down the opacity of that material. That was a lot more complicated and it just had a lot more bugs and a lot more problems than I thought it would. So then I went to another version, which was having a collider with this big tube, and anything that this big tube touched, those materials would fade down in opacity. And then there was more problems, and then it just turned out to be easy just to use the asset store one. So that's what I'm going to do. And the asset store works off like rendering layers and like sort of like the rendering pipeline, rather than just using colliders and materials. So anyway, I'm going to explain a bit about this game. Now that you've sort of got a brief idea of what I'm up to, and although what I just showed you might not really seem like much, it took a while to get that going. I'm not the best programmer in the world, so I'm pretty proud of some of that stuff. But I've got a lot more to do. So the whole idea for the game, I've made this little Photoshop thing here, is the easiest way to explain this game would be imagine Age of Empires meets Rust meets Minecraft meets Don't Starve Together meets Hurt World meets some other games. So yeah, if that wasn't confusing enough, I've sort of made this little graphic to sort of simplify my idea. So the whole idea for this game, the core idea that sort of created this game, was I really love base building. Any games, I love base building and I love exploration. One thing that annoys me about those two games is whenever I used to play Minecraft or Rust or anything, you would build a base and then it would get destroyed or get raided, or you would spend the whole time just walking around the map looking for a place to build a base, and it was just, you just never had one big home that was always your home. And like, yes, more like sometimes you would, but it would either get destroyed or you'd create a new one in a day. And I really, sometimes, like there's some games like the game, if you've ever played Astroneer, like you land down in a world, and then where you land, like that's your base, and you're forced to really make that central point your base, and then you go out on little missions and then you come back. And I really, really like that gameplay. I think it's just really fun and really interesting, and it really makes you care about your base and really make it really homely, and you sort of have to prepare for the future because down the line that's going to be your base, that's going to be your home ground. So I wanted this whole sort of idea where there was this whole sort of centralized map where basically you spawn in a circle in the middle, and then it just sort of, it's a huge map. It's not random generation. It's a built map by me. So you spawn this little center, and then we have our normal sort of forest sort of biome, I guess, in the center. So this could be a kilometer by a kilometer, and there's little rivers and resources, and it's all somewhat friendly and easy. And then when you want to sort of level up a bit and you need some more interesting resources, you want to start exploring, you want to find some relics, you want to go in some dungeons, and then maybe you'll start encountering some harder enemies. There'll be like a rainforest biome, for example, and then if you want to go even further out, there'll be a desert where there'll be harsher conditions to live in, harsher enemies, but there'll be better loot, better resources, and then maybe there'll be some sort of stone mining, and there'll be some lava biome, I don't know, but I like this whole sort of idea where you're centralized, and then the player sort of goes out for journeys, and it gets harder and harder as you go out. And your base is like your home base. That's where you always come back to. And yeah, so obviously that's the sort of the general idea. There'll be base building. You'll be able to completely customize and build your own base, similar to sort of like a Rust build style, if you've ever played Rust before, but just a bit more detailed and a bit more interesting. It'll be, you won't be able to edit the terrain or anything like that. It will be like a handmade map. And this is something I've thought about for a long time. There's two reasons I don't really want or like procedural generation. One, it's really, really hard to do. I'm not very good at coding procedural generation. It's very hard. So that's probably honestly half of it, is I'm simply not good enough to do it. And the other half, and I'd say that's probably 30-40% of the reason, and I'd say around 70% of the reason is, I don't know why, but my whole life I've just really preferred like man-made map design. If there's any of you out there, and I keep referring to this game just because it's one of the games I've played the most, which is Rust. If there's anyone watching this video that played the legacy version of Rust, you would know that there was just one map. And there's a lot of other games that I could sort of use this comparison to. But sometimes there's games that just have one handmade map, like Skyrim or Witcher or something like that, and it's amazing. Like that map doesn't get old. It never gets old because it's so big and so vast and so much to do. And anytime you're in any of those places in the map, it just feels special. Like you can tell there's care and time taken into where you are. And you go to random generation maps, and yes, they're different every time, and that makes it new and exciting. They can just feel a bit dead because they just don't have that time, that care, and that attention to detail put in because it's just randomly generated by a computer. And that's never something I've quite liked. I always remember when they created a new version of the Rust with the random generation maps. That was actually something I hated, and I still really don't like, to be honest. I really like maps that are sort of created by hand. So my general idea for this game going forward is you spawn in the middle, huge map. It's gonna take a long time to make this map. And then it's gonna be handmade. There's gonna be rivers and different biomes and blah blah blah. And then there's going to be a whole bunch of things that randomly rotate and spawn within the map. So it's a bit of a combination of the two. The terrain and the landmarks and stuff itself will all stay the same. But let's say, for example, there's like a relic. I don't know, maybe there's like a big monster that spawns here, and then he's guarding like this little crystal, and then you need this crystal to craft into a spaceship. This won't happen in the game, but it's just an example. So maybe sometimes he'll spawn over here. Maybe if you were to reload the game, he would spawn over here, or here, or here. So sort of there'll be key landmarks and things that will completely change. Every time you load the map, they'll be in a completely different spot. Although this river will always be here, these trees will always be here. All of like the cool, interesting little parts will constantly always shift. So that's basically just so like you spawn in a game and then you can't just like start running northeast because you know exactly where this thing is, and then you pick that up and then you start running the other way and you know exactly where that is. It's going to change every time. So no matter what, even though you're going to be familiarized with the map, if you play it multiple times, you'll still have to go out and explore and search for things because you won't know where they are every time. So that's the sort of general idea. As for the base building, I'm still a little bit unsure. Maybe you guys can help me a little bit here. I'm a bit unsure of the base building. So currently I've sort of got three options in my mind. The first option is you spawn, the sort of the spawn area for the game, the most friendly sort of normal biome, I guess, is the center sort of circle. And then within this circle, there's a bunch of sort of spawn locations that are basically similar to this. So you spawn, and they won't like look like this or anything like that, but it will just be like a patch of grass that you happen to spawn on that maybe is a slightly different color, and that's where you can build. So in this build zone here, it may not look very big, this sort of little patch of yellow, but that's around 70 foundations. And that's a lot of foundations. You can fit a huge and you can build up as well. You will be able to build up. You'll be able to build ceilings and staircases and all that. So that's actually a pretty big building area. But yeah, so there'll be a bunch of these scattered around, and you'll randomly spawn at one. So maybe there'll be 15 different like build areas, and then depending on what one gets picked when you load up the world, you'll spawn into that one. That's one idea. I'm still on the fence about that idea. The second idea is there's one big build area right in the middle, and that's where you spawn in every time, and that's where you build every time. It would be bigger. It would definitely be bigger than this. I'm saying the build area would probably be like that big. Like it would probably be like 100 by 100 or 50 by 50 square or something, because I really want it to still be very creative and you can build whatever you want and just sort of build to your heart's content. But you'll only be able to build right in the middle. You always have to come back to your base. You can't just build anywhere in the map. So that's the second idea, which is probably the idea I'm leaning towards at the moment. And then the third option is you can build anywhere in that middle circle, only in this center biome. So you'll spawn in a random place in this middle biome and you can build anywhere, but it has to be in this center biome. So it's sort of keeping that whole sort of centralized feel, but just to a bigger scale. You have a bit more creativity and a bit more reach, but I'm not sure if it's going to sort of take away from it or not. Those are my three ideas. Maybe you guys can let me know what you think. At the moment, I'm sort of leaning towards either option 3, which is build anywhere, or option 2, which is just build in the middle. I'm not quite sure. But yeah, that's a general sort of idea for my game. Obviously, at the moment, I've made a brief sort of player movement system. I've started to, add some interactable items with these trees, and I've just started to work on the building system. Because those are 3 obviously very, very key features in the game, so I want to get them working as soon as possible. As for I'll briefly show you around those systems now. So this is a tree, and saying that as well, all of these systems are like the very first version. So everything you're seeing right now is me just trying to quickly get things working, just so I can start testing. None of these things are going to be efficient. The code's going to look like crap. It's just gonna, yeah, they're not meant to be good. So please don't bother like writing in the comments, oh my god, you could have written that line of code way better. You should have written it like this, or oh, why are you using 3 colliders on that object? You could only use this, blah blah. I don't care. Like it's supposed to be bad. I'm just making things so they work, so I can actually start to get a feel for the game and test the game and start making things. That's something very important about game design. You don't just spend a month making the perfect tree and work on nothing else. You make a tree that's good enough, and then you start working on a whole bunch of other things that are good enough, and then you build the whole game up evenly. You don't just work on one thing and make that thing perfect and then move on to the next. Because you need to know if your game's fun. You need to know if your game's playable, which is why you sort of need to get as many moving parts working as quickly as possible. But anyway, yeah, now I've said that, I've got my tree here. So the tree has its basic, like its colliders. So it's got the collider for the stalk, for the trunk, and then a collider for the leaves. So these colliders are what detect the clicking, the input, and just the general physics of the tree. And then this little sphere collider here is what detects if the player is nearby the tree. So there's a lot of things, there's a lot of aspects of game design that people don't actually, like the general person playing the game, don't understand that are actually mechanics to begin with. And this is one of those things. So, for example, if I click on a tree and move up to it, when I get within the radius of the tree, I just stop moving. And if I was just a random person playing this game, I just wouldn't even think about that. I'm like, yeah, sure, of course you'd stop moving. You get up to the point where you want to move and you stop moving. But that's like functionality that someone's coded in and spent a lot of time to make it that way. As well as if I'm moving like this and then I get to the point, I think I've actually removed that. Yep, I've removed it. There you go. I did add some functionality where if you just click and then you hold, you'll stop moving, but obviously he just starts dancing instead. So I'll have to add that back in. But you get to the tree, you stop moving. So basically what's happening here is this tree has some colliders on it, and it's got this little collider here, this sphere collider, and this sphere collider collides with the player's collider around it, and it basically just says, hey, if you hit a collider called tree, stop moving. So yeah, that's basically it. And then if you click away from the tree, you can move again. Oh, my Unity's frozen. That's fantastic. So we'll play it again. But yeah, so if you click on the tree and you're within the tree's radius, you don't move. And then you click again, you start hitting the tree. And then if you click away, you can just move as normal. And then the tree has its basic sort of parameters. Where's the tree I've been hitting? This one. So it's got, if the player's been detected, so the player's right next to it, so it's ticked on at the moment. It's got mouse over as well, so you can see whenever my mouse goes over that tree, it detects my mouse bead over it, which is how I detect like the clicking and all the input. Then I have a UI canvas, which is it's currently turned off because I'm not clicking on the tree. If I click on, it will turn on again, and that's just made up of two little bars, a fill and a background. And then the fill amount just matches how much I've hit the tree. So if I make it big and then I hit the tree again, it'll go back down to what the actual health is. And then we have a model, and then we have a rigid body. And we have a little particle system, which is this woodcut, and that's what plays every time you hit the tree. And yeah, it's pretty basic. And then this whole sort of script can easily just be dumped on any sort of item, and then you have a different sort of interactable item. So I could just duplicate this tree and then make it a rock, and then change a couple of things around, and then suddenly I have a rock. So yeah, that's a basic sort of item system. And yeah, I'll just quickly say, this is going to be a long video, so sort of buckle in, because I want to really show you where I'm at, because I haven't done a video in a while, so I just want to make sure everyone sort of knows where this whole game's at, and I want to actually explain what I'm sort of doing in a bit more detail. So I've worked on a lot of building systems before in games. If you've ever seen the game Rust, I actually completely remade that building system myself, in like a first-person shooter sort of way. That's a completely different project that I just did for fun a while ago, and I completely remade. That's it, and I was working perfectly, and I was really proud of it. So now I've sort of reworked that sort of knowledge into a building system for this game. So the reason I really sort of need to figure out how the building's going to work in relation to this Photoshop thing is, should I have it build anywhere in the map, build in the center, or build into given points, is because the building system, the way I create the building system really depends on that. And the reason it does is because a few reasons. So at the moment, I've done a really quick and nasty way to do the building system. This is just so I can get something working. So if I click on this little thing here, it says foundations, you can see there's a whole bunch of invisible sort of colliders, a whole bunch of objects that basically they're all of the places that are possible to build a foundation. And you might sort of understand how it all works seeing this. So basically all that happens at the moment is my mouse hovers over one of these points, and then it detects whatever one of these colliders I'm hitting, and then it says this sort of invisible object. So I've got these ghost objects. So I've got ghost foundation, which is sort of this see-through little object. So basically I've just got a script that basically just says, let's move this guy over here, that just says wherever my mouse is touching, whatever one of these my mouse is touching, make this thing that's floating around match the position of that. So this thing is sort of just jumping to all these points depending on what one it sort of meets. And then if I click, it just creates a new foundation at that exact point. And it's really, really basic. I do know how to make that work in a much more efficient, much more better way, and I actually did do that. So if I go to the script here, I'll go to building controller. So I've previously, I think I deleted it. Okay, well, this is a building system at the moment, really basic. It's just super basic. So previously I think I actually have an old version of the building controller somewhere. Here we go. So here's the Rust building system that I was working on. This is going to be really confusing. I'm just going to sort of skim through this. So with the Rust building system, I basically made a script that basically just says, wherever my mouse touches, so if my mouse touches any point in the terrain, get that point, and then it just runs this quick little method that just says, now round off that point to the grid size. So it'll just use some maths just to say, if the position of my mouse is here, and here currently the position of this thing is 49 minus 1.7 and 8.55, it will round off all these values to like the nearest whole value. So go minus 1, 49, and then it'll be 10, and then that's a grid point. And then if I go to make another foundation, rather than making the position of the foundation like here, it will round off all those positions again to be minus 50, and then 0, and then 10, or not 10, whatever this is, whatever this position here is, or round off all those positions to be that, which is obviously a lot better than just having preset little, objects everywhere. But for now, this is just a really easy way to get it working. So that's why I'm sort of waiting to sort of figure out how I'm going to do it, because I don't know. So I'd love to get all of your feedback. with this whole idea. It's a lot of information to take on, and this whole video is just super like rambly and all that. But yeah, I just wanted to make sort of like a bit longer video and try to explain as best as I can what I'm up to and what I'm doing and what's happening and all of that. So that's a general idea of what I'm up to and what I'm working on. What I'm going to be working on next is I'll be working a bit more on the building system. So I'll add a few more. I'll add a staircase and ceilings and like a door. I'll just get like a very basic sort of building blocks up so you can build little bases. Then I'll start to work a little bit more on the map, maybe some enemies, and then I'll eventually start working on an inventory system and the UI system. I'll probably have to start working on the UI and the inventory first, to be honest. It's just hard. I'm not very good at coding inventory, so I'm a little bit scared. So hopefully that goes well. But yeah, that's where I'm up to. If you have any ideas, like this is the whole reason I'm making these videos, is so I can collaborate with all of you watching, and you can give me your feedback and give me your ideas, and we can sort of work together to make a really cool game. Because I'm aware that, you know, I don't always have the best ideas. I'm just one dude. I've just played, you know, so many games in my lifetime, and all of my ideas and all my knowledge are just based off the games that I've played and the knowledge that I have. And all of you watching have probably played a lot different games and done a lot different things in your life, and you have a lot of different fresh ideas and perspectives that I might not understand, which is fantastic. So one thing, if there's only one thing I can ask of all of you that are giving me ideas in the comments, is try to put yourself in the shoes of a game developer, which can be really hard. And what I mean by that is, so for example, I'm the game developer, I'm making this game, and you may think it's just going to be always better to be able to build everywhere in the map. Like, obviously, that's way better. Like, it's more freedom to the player. They should always be able to build everywhere. But try to think in a game developer's mind where when you're creating a game, you're trying to create an experience. You're not just trying to make a game where everything's possible. You're not trying to make the game where you can do as much as possible, and the more you can do a game means the better the game is. You're trying to create like a specific experience and a specific gameplay for the person in the game. So if you can build anywhere in this map, that's going to detract away from the gameplay that I'm wanting to have. So the gameplay I'm wanting to have is basically you have your home base. You go out on little missions, little sort of scavenger missions, go adventuring, and then you venture your way back and build up your home base to build this huge, awesome, customized castle or whatever you want it to be. And then you constantly have to sort of go out. There's going to be enemies. I'm thinking there'll also be sort of attacks on your base. So maybe if you go out here and you kill a big wizard, you kill a big golem, then that sort of triggers like an attack on your base later from golems. That's just a weird example, but yeah, so I want this sort of home base idea. So I just want you to think about that when you're thinking of things to try and sort of help me, is think about not necessarily just more is better. Think about what would actually make the gameplay interesting, because sometimes you need to add restrictions, sometimes you need to stop the player from doing things and cut things off to make it more fun. And I know that might not necessarily make sense, or might be hard to understand, but yeah, there's a lot of I'm trying to think of the best examples for that. But for example, Minecraft, there's a building limit. You can only go 256 high in the sky. And that's in there for a reason. It's in there for performance, and they need to limit it somewhere. Otherwise, the whole game would just explode. But it forces you to be creative because it's limiting your creativity. Sometimes you're most creative when you have a set of rules and you need to try and be as flexible as possible within those sets of rules. So yeah, that's the only thing I can suggest, is throughout this whole process of me making this game, just try to hop in my mind and try and get the vision that I have, rather than just saying, no, Julian, that's a terrible idea. Make them build anywhere in the map because that's way better. That's what Minecraft does. That's what all these other games do. The game I'm creating it's not those other games. It's completely different. I don't want this to be Minecraft. I don't want this to be other games. But I would absolutely love all of your help. So yeah, there you go. We just hit the 30-minute mark. About to hit the 30-minute mark. So yeah, that pretty long video. So if you're still watching, you're amazing. If you're still watching, tell me your favorite flavor of icy poles or popsicles or whatever you call them. I think in Australia we call them icy poles. I think in America you call them popsicles. I'm not sure what other people call them, but frozen, you know, the frozen things that you lick, those things. If you're still watching, tell me your favorite flavor of them, and you're awesome. So I hope you enjoyed. If you have any ideas, obviously let me know in the comments. And also, if you have any ideas for other videos like tutorials and things, let me know in the comments as well. I love everyone's feedback. So I hope you have an amazing day, everybody. It's been Julian of Flow Graphics. See ya.